Right now, out over the dark lagoons, something with a wingspan close to a meter is flying an inch above the water, dragging its claws through the surface to hook the fish swimming just underneath. You'd never hear it coming. It hunts by shouting in a register too high for human ears. That's one animal on one night in the largest tropical wetland on the planet. The Pantanal looks harmless in daylight. Birds everywhere, water to the horizon, capybaras half asleep in the sun. But it doesn't run on daylight. It runs on what's underneath it. Down there, one animal carries 800 volts. One slips into flesh before the sting even registers. And one sits on a dead branch all day pretending to be wood. Then, after dark, makes a sound like a person crying. None of them are angry. None of them are coming for you on purpose. That's the part people get wrong. They don't have to be. Before we go under the water, do me one favor. Tell me down in the comments what time it is where you are right now and what part of the world you're watching this from. Candiru! There is a fish in these rivers thin enough to slide through the gap in a wedding ring. It's about the length of a matchstick, pale, and almost completely see-through. And in water, this brown, that transparency is the whole point. You will never spot one. It doesn't hunt with its eyes. It hunts with chemistry. The Candiru, Vandellia serosa, is a parasite, and it makes its living on the inside of other fish. It reads the water the way a shark reads it, following a faint chemical trail straight to the source. That source is usually the gills of a big catfish. The Candiru slips in through the gill slit, finds the soft tissue where the blood runs closest to the surface, and feeds. In a few minutes, it swells to 2 or 3 times its own size, drops off, and sinks back into the dark before the host even registers that anything happened. The host, in most cases, never knows. Here's the part that put this fish into legend. The trail it follows is ammonia, the compound that leaks out of a fish's gills with every breath. And there is one other place in these rivers that quietly releases ammonia into the water. A person relieving themselves while they swim. To the Candiru, that plume reads exactly like a set of gills. It isn't interested in people. It has no concept of people. It's following a signal, and the signal is pointing the wrong way. That's the whole tragedy of it. It isn't malice, it's a navigation error, and the Candiru commits to it completely, and it commits fast. In tests, a Candiru can locate and enter a narrow opening in 3 to 5 seconds. By the time there's any sensation at all, it's already inside and already anchored. Anchored is the right word. On the back of its head, the Candiru has a set of bony spines that fold flat while it's swimming. The moment it's inside somewhere tight, those spines flare outward, like an umbrella opening, except the umbrella is made of hooks. You cannot simply pull it back out. The spines are angled to resist exactly that. Once they're set, the only way it's coming out is a surgeon's table. That single detail is why, of every animal in this entire video, this is the one that makes grown adults refuse to get in the water, and its aim is almost unfair. Researchers found the Candiru can detect urea and ammonia at concentrations of about 1 part per million, a trace, a rumor of a chemical in a moving river, and steer toward it like something guided. In the gill chamber of a big catfish, it uses the host's own heartbeat to feed, letting the pressure do the pumping so it barely has to work. It is small, it is patient, and it is very, very good at the one thing it does. The Candiru wins by being too small to see. The next one wins by being impossible to notice even when you're staring right at it. Common Potoo. If you've ever heard a recording of the Pantanal at night and felt the hair on your arms stand up, there's a good chance this is the animal that did it. It's a bird. It's the reason a lot of these rivers have ghost stories. The common Potoo, Nyctibius griseus, known here as the urutau, the mother of the moon, spends its entire day pretending to be dead wood, and it is better at it than anything else in this ecosystem. It finds a broken branch, perches on the very tip, points its beak straight up at the sky, and then it stops. Completely. It doesn't blink. It doesn't shift its weight. It doesn't even let its breathing move its feathers in a way you could catch. Its plumage is patterned like weathered bark and stretched out stiff and vertical like that. It becomes a seamless extension of the branch. You can walk directly underneath one, look right at it, and see a stump, but it's watching you the entire time. This is the detail that upgrades it from strange to unsettling. Along the edge of its upper eyelids, the Potoo has two tiny slits, small notches in the lid itself. So it can close its eyes completely, hold the disguise, look for all the world like it's asleep or like it's simply a piece of wood, and still see out through those cuts. It keeps near total awareness of everything around it without ever revealing that it's awake. A predator can be closing in, and the Potoo is tracking it the whole way, sitting perfectly still, giving away nothing. It's picky about its branch, too. It doesn't just grab the nearest perch. It reads the angle of the sun and the way the shadows are falling, and it positions itself so that its dead wood costume doesn't throw a shadow that looks wrong. A stump casts a certain kind of shadow. A bird casts another. The Potoo does the math so that nothing about its outline reads as alive from the air, where the real danger is. And then there's the sound. After dark, the Potoo lets out a long, descending, mournful call that drops note by note into silence. It carries, low-frequency travels, and this one moves across the water for what feels like miles. The reason it unsettles people so badly is that its shape lands almost exactly on the tonal pattern of a human sobbing. Not similar, almost the same curve. People who've spent their whole lives out here still describe hearing it as a cold, specific kind of wrong. Now hold the image of this quiet, sorrowful little statue, because the reality of how it eats is the opposite of quiet. That tiny, delicate beak is the front of a mouth that is enormous. When it opens, it splits the head nearly ear to ear into a wide, cavernous gape. When a large moth or a heavy beetle passes in the dark, the Potoo drops off its perch, opens that mouth like a net thrown across the night air, takes the insect whole, and is back on the exact same branch a second later, a stump again, weeping again, watching you through its closed eyes. Yellow anaconda, both of the last two win by staying still. So does this one. But there is a difference between a fish you can't feel and a bird you can't see, and a body this big. Holding this still, in water this dark. The yellow anaconda, Eunectes notaeus, is the Pantanal's version of the giant, and it hunts by disappearing. It lies just under the surface with only its eyes and nostrils breaking the water, motionless for as long as it takes in the muddy shallows where capybaras and deer and birds come down to drink. It doesn't chase. Chasing isn't the plan. The plan is that the animal at the water's edge never learns the snake is there until the water moves. When it does strike, it doesn't rely on the strike. It raps, and the rap is the whole event. People imagine the anaconda crushing bones for effect. That's not what it's doing at all. And the truth is more efficient than that. It coils and it holds, and it reads its prey through its own skin, feeling for the pulse. Every time the heart tries to push, the coils answer, tightening to meet it. Studies of exactly this found that the pressure stops the flow through the major arteries almost immediately. The supply to the brain simply gets cut off, and the lights go out far faster than most people assume, well before anything to do with breathing even matters. It's over in seconds, and the snake barely moved. Then there's the mouth. And this is the part that doesn't seem like it should be physically possible. An anaconda's skull isn't a single locked structure like ours. The bones aren't fused solid. They're held together by elastic, high-tension ligaments, so the whole thing can flex and spread, top to bottom and side to side. That's how a snake gets around prey far wider than itself. It doesn't unhinge its jaw and gulp. It walks its head over the meal, one side of the mouth and then the other, pulling itself forward tooth by tooth. A yellow anaconda can take on prey equal to 60, even 80% of its own body mass, and then spend the next several weeks lying under a raft of floating plants, doing nothing but digesting. And this is where the monster movie version falls apart. Put this animal on dry land, and it's almost helpless. In the water, it's a shadow that swallows deer. Out of it, all that mass turns against it. It's slow, it's heavy, it's clumsy, and it knows it. A jaguar or a herd of peccaries can overpower one on land without much trouble, and the anaconda's actual instinct, the thing it does, the moment it feels the heavy footstep of something large coming through the mud, is not to rise up. It's to slip away quietly and hope it was never noticed at all, which, when you think about it, makes it a strange fit for the most feared thing in the water. An ambush hunter whose real specialty is leaving before you know it was ever there. Brazilian wandering spider. Most spiders want nothing to do with you. They feel you coming, and they leave. This one does the opposite, and that single fact is why it has the reputation it has. The Brazilian wandering spider, Phoneutria spp, the armadillo, doesn't build a web and wait. It roams. At night, it moves across the ground hunting on foot, and during the day, it looks for somewhere dark and tucked away to rest, which in the Pantanal means the underside of a log, a pile of firewood, a folded tarp, or, the detail everyone out here knows by heart, the inside of a boot left by the door. It isn't seeking people out. It's seeking a snug, dark corner. Sometimes those are the same thing, and that's where the trouble starts. What earns it its name is what it does when it's cornered. It doesn't run and it doesn't curl up. It rears. It lifts its 4 front legs straight up into the air, pushes up onto its back legs to gain height, and lifts its body into a posture that reads, in any language, as a warning. And then it tracks you. If you move left, the whole raised front of the spider follows you left. It's measuring the distance. As long as you respect that distance, it holds the pose. Cross the line, and it comes forward in a fast, springing lunge. It can cover ground in a blink from that loaded position. It hunts the same way it defends itself, entirely by feel, in total darkness. The hairs covering its legs are sensitive enough to pick up the wing beat of a mosquito passing nearby, or the footsteps of an ant crossing the ground beside it. It doesn't need to see anything. It builds a map of the dark out of vibration alone, and it strikes into that map with precision. Now here's the turn nobody expects. This animal, with one of the most potent venoms of any spider in the region, has quietly become one of the most valuable creatures in a medical lab. Its venom is a cocktail. Researchers call the main fraction PHTX3, and it works by jamming the ion channels that nerves use to send signals, which is exactly why a bite feels the way it does. But one component of that same venom does something so specific and so useful that scientists have spent years studying it. It became the basis for research into a well-known men's health medication. The same chemistry that makes this spider dangerous is being read, molecule by molecule, for its usefulness. A little of it can shut down the breathing of a small rodent almost at once. A different piece of it might end up in a pharmacy. Same venom! That's the kind of contradiction the Pantanal specializes in. It hunts by feeling for its target in the dark. The next animal does too, except it doesn't feel with hairs. It feels with electricity. Electric eel 860 volts. That's the number that matters here, and it belongs to a fish that is nearly blind. That can't hunt with its eyes at all, and that lives in some of the murkiest water in the Pantanal. The electric eel, Electrophorus varii, the puricae, is not really an eel. It's a long fish with almost its entire body given over to a single job, making electricity. Most of that stretched out body isn't muscle for swimming, and it isn't organs. It's thousands of specialized cells stacked in rows like the plates in a battery. On their own, each one produces a tiny charge. But when the fish's nervous system gives the signal, all of them fire at the same instant, and the charges add up along the length of its body and pour out into the water all at once. The number that gets quoted is around 860 volts, with a current strong enough to stop a large animal in its tracks. Enough, people say, to put a horse on the ground. In the water, that charge spreads in every direction, and anything caught inside the field seizes up. That's how it hunts. It sweeps the water with weak pulses first, using them like a kind of radar to feel out what's around it. That's how a nearly blind fish finds a frog or another fish in zero visibility. And once it knows exactly where its target is, it fires the full discharge. The prey locks up instantly, and the eel takes it in with a quick pull of suction. It's over before the prey knew the eel was in the same stretch of river. Then, it does something researchers only recently proved, and it's the detail that makes this fish genuinely alarming. If the threat is up out of the water, a leg, a dog, an animal standing in the shallows near its space, the eel doesn't stay submerged and hope the charge reaches. It rises. It presses its chin directly against the intruder and lifts partway out of the water, and by touching the target directly, it delivers the full voltage straight into the body with nothing in between to weaken it. It has, in effect, learned to reach out of its own element to make the shock count. And for all that power, the Puraque has one strange vulnerability that most people never hear about. It cannot breathe underwater. Its gills are reduced and nearly useless in the low-oxygen, muddy water it prefers, so it breathes air, real, atmospheric air, and it has to. Every 10 to 15 minutes it must rise to the surface and take a gulp, or it's in serious trouble. The most electric animal in these rivers is quietly tied to the surface by a thread, coming up for air on a schedule, like a swimmer who can never quite finish the lap. Hoary fox. The sound comes from the edge of the light, and the first time you hear it, it does not sound like an animal. It sounds like laughing. People who camp out on the open plains of the Pantanal describe it the same way. A series of short, sharp, rhythmic yips in the dark that land uncomfortably close to the sound of a person laughing too hard, or a child calling out. It moves around you in the black beyond the fire, and there's nothing there when you look. For centuries, that sound fed the ghost stories out here. The thing making it is about the size of a small dog, the hoary fox. Lycolopex vetulus, the raposa do campo, is a little wild canid with the build of a miniature wolf and the eyes that flash back at any light, the way a predator should. Everything about its silhouette says, hunter. And then you find out what it actually eats, and the whole menacing picture quietly falls apart. It eats bugs, mostly termites and beetles. This little wolf of the grassland is one of the most insect-eating members of the entire dog family anywhere on Earth. And it spends its nights not chasing down prey, but working the ground for insects, hour after hour. Its teeth even went along with the plan. Where a bigger canid has blades built for slicing meat, this fox's back teeth came out fine and pointed, shaped for cracking the hard shells of beetles. It is, in the most literal way, built for bugs, and it's astonishingly good at finding them. It can hear a colony of termites moving underground through dry, packed earth from a distance and pinpoint the exact spot to start digging using nothing but its ears. But the detail I like most is a partnership researchers have actually mapped out here. When a giant anteater tears open a termite mound with those enormous claws, a lot of insects come boiling out and scatter. The hoary fox has learned to shadow the anteater, to follow the giant around and snap up the escapees the big animal knocks loose. It doesn't fight anything for the meal. It just tags along behind the demolition crew and cleans up. So there it is. The thing circling your camp in the dark, filling the plane with a sound that raises every hair on your neck and has scared travelers out here for generations, is a knee-high fox, chasing after an anteater, hoping to catch a few loose termites before they get away. Giant water bug. This is the largest predatory insect in the Pantanal, and it is big enough that the number does most of the work. Up to about 5 inches of solid, armored bug sitting underwater, waiting for something with a spine to swim past. Most insects are food for vertebrates. This one flipped that around. It eats them. The giant water bug, Lithoceros grandis, anchors itself to a stem below the surface and hangs there, patient and still with its front legs folded and ready. Those front legs aren't for walking. They're modified into hooked grappling arms, and when a frog or a young fish or even a small water snake drifts within range, the bug fires them out and clamps down. It routinely takes prey many times its own size. It doesn't overpower them with strength alone. It has a tool for that. Set between those grabbing arms is a short, rigid, needle-sharp beak called a rostrum. And this is where the story turns from big bug to something out of a horror film. Once the water bug has a grip, it drives that beak in and injects its saliva. And its saliva is a chemical demolition kit, loaded with enzymes that break down tissue. From the inside, in a matter of minutes, the prey's muscle and organs are turned to liquid. And then the bug simply drinks it back out through the same beak. What's left afterward is the empty shell of the animal, the skin and not much else, drifting off into the water. That's the entire meal. It doesn't tear off pieces. It turns the inside of its catch into something it can sip and leaves the outside floating. For an animal this committed to lurking underwater, it has a surprising second life. On warm nights, especially in the breeding season or when its pond starts drying up, the giant water bug hauls itself out of the river and flies. Well, and far. It's a strong, long-distance flyer, and it navigates toward light, which means it ends up thumping into the lamp on a farmhouse porch or landing in the middle of a lit-up campsite. This heavy aquatic thing suddenly clattering around on dry land where it clearly doesn't belong. And if you make the mistake of picking one up, you learn its other nickname. In English, people call it the toe biter, and the reason is that same beak. Its defensive jab is rated among the most painful bites any insect can give a person. Not because of size, but because those tissue-dissolving enzymes go to work on human nerve endings the same way they work on a frog. The pain is the chemistry, not the puncture. The water bug turns its meal into something it can drink. The next animal needs the exact opposite. It needs its food to stay solid so it can break it. Big-headed Amazon River turtle. Forget everything gentle you associate with turtles for a minute, because this one bites down and does not let go. It grabs, and then it rolls its whole body to twist a piece loose. It's the reason people who fish these rivers keep their fingers well clear when one comes up in the net. The big-headed Amazon river turtle, Peltocephalus dumerillianus. The cabasuda looks like it swam straight out of the fossil record. It has a heavy prehistoric build and a head so oversized it can't fully pull it into its shell, and it doesn't try. Threaten it, and it doesn't hide. It throws that thick neck forward in a fast strike and clamps on. The head is the whole point of this animal, and it's not an exaggeration to say so. Relative to its body, its skull is one of the largest of any turtle on the planet, packed with muscle built for one function, closing that mouth with tremendous force. And there are no teeth in that mouth. There's something arguably worse. Its jaws are sheathed in blades of keratin, the same material as your fingernails but thickened and hardened into cutting edges. When the mouth closes, the lower jaw seats precisely inside the upper one, edge meeting edge, and all that muscle drives it like a guillotine. It's a clean shearing mechanism, and it lets the cabasuda crack open things most animals can't touch: the hard shells of crabs, the tough seeds and nuts of palm fruits, right through the armor. which brings up the part that doesn't fit the monster look at all. This heavy, armored, snapping river reptile spends a great deal of its time eating fruit. When the forest floods, the cabasuda moves through the drowned trees, feeding on fallen seeds and fruits, and it eats enough of them that it functions as a genuine gardener of the flooded forest, carrying seeds through its gut and spreading them as it goes. The animal built like a nutcracker is out there planting palm trees, and here's what makes that skull worth pausing on. When paleontologists trace this turtle's design back through time, they find it has barely changed in millions of years. The crushing head, the keratin blades, the whole layout, it locked into place a very long time ago and simply never needed updating. In a biome that reshuffles its predators constantly, this was one of the answers that came out right the first time. It's a design that worked so well nothing ever improved on it. Giant centipede. Almost every dangerous animal we've covered so far shares one instinct. When something much bigger shows up, they leave. They hide, they slip away, they hold still and hope. This next one does not have that instinct. When something enormous looms over it, the giant centipede comes forward. The giant centipede, Scolopendra viridicornis, lives under rotting logs and loose rocks and in the dark cracks of the Pantanal, and it is built entirely for offense. It's fast, genuinely, unsettlingly fast, pouring across the ground on dozens of legs, tracking the world through a pair of long, hypersensitive antennae. And when it meets a threat, it doesn't calculate the size difference the way a spider does. It advances, striking as it goes. And it will throw the front of its body forward and wrap its many spined legs around something far larger than itself. Its weapon is a pair of things that look like fangs but aren't. They're the first pair of legs, evolved over time into curved, hollow, pointed claws sitting just beneath the mouth. And they work like a matched set of hypodermic needles, each one plumbed straight into a venom gland. When the centipede seizes prey, those claws punch in and pump venom designed to shut down a nervous system in seconds. On a small animal, it's fast and final. On a person, the venom announces itself immediately. People who've been struck describe it as something close to a burn from molten metal, and it can leave the surrounding tissue damaged and bring on a fever that drags out for days, and the reputation doesn't fully prepare you for what it can do. You look at it and read, primitive, blind, ground-crawling bug, and then you learn it can hunt in the air. A giant centipede can climb to the roof of a cave or the underside of a branch, hang on by nothing but its rear legs, and reach out into open space to snatch flying insects, and even bats, as they pass. It fishes for things out of the air while dangling upside down by its back end. Biochemists who've pulled its venom apart found the specific piece that makes it so effective. Molecules that block the potassium channels mammals depend on to keep muscles working properly. Jam those channels and the muscles seize over and over, and in a small animal, the whole system that keeps it running comes apart in moments. That's the mechanism. That's what's loaded into a pair of claws on an animal you could cover with your hand. Greater bulldog bat. Here's a problem to sit with for a second. A bat hunts by sound. It throws out a call, listens for the echo, and builds a picture of the world from what bounces back. That works beautifully in open air. It does not work through water. Sound hits the surface and mostly bounces off, so the world under the water is, to a bat, a closed door. And yet there's a bat over the Pantanal's lagoons that fishes for a living. So how does it find a fish it cannot hear? The greater bulldog bat, Noctilio leperinus, solved it by never trying to hear the fish at all. It listens to the water instead. When a fish swims near the surface, it leaves a signature up top. Tiny ripples, little breaks, and swirls in the smoothness. Those the bat can read. Its call bounces off those surface disturbances perfectly well. And from the pattern of ripples, it works out where the fish is, how big, which way it's moving, all without a single echo ever reaching the fish itself. It uses the surface of the water as an informant against everything swimming just beneath it. Then it goes in. It drops down and flies just above the water, and it lowers its feet, which are not ordinary feet. Its back toes carry long, curved, blade-sharp claws, and they're flattened along the sides so they slice through the water cleanly instead of dragging, built for exactly this. The bat rakes those claws through the surface like a pair of trailing hooks and pulls the fish straight up out of the river, all while keeping its speed. With a wingspan pushing close to a meter, it makes a broad, pale shape crossing the water under the moon. And it's a big enough silhouette that people who see it never quite forget it. One more number, because it's hard to believe. The calls this bat makes can reach around 140 decibels. That's the range of a jet engine at takeoff. It's screaming, essentially, in a register you can't hear. And it has to protect itself from its own volume. It adjusts its hearing on the fly, dialing its ears down at the instant it shouts and back up in time to catch the faint echo returning. It's shouting loud enough to injure itself and dodging the recoil every single time. But dragging your feet through Pantanal water is not a free move. The bat is flying an inch above a river that is full of things that would happily turn the hunter into the hunted. Skim a fraction too low, catch a wingtip, drop in, and the water below is not empty. Something is always waiting down there. And a lot of the time, the thing waiting is the next animal on this list. Red-bellied piranha. You already have a picture of this fish, and the picture is mostly wrong. The movies gave us a lagoon that can strip an animal to bare bone in a minute, a water that turns to foam the second anything falls in. The real red-bellied piranha is a nervous, jumpy fish that spends most of its life trying not to be eaten. The red-bellied piranha, Pygocentris naturari, schools up in large numbers, and it does that for protection, not for war. Out here, it's near the bottom of a lot of menus. Giant otters hunt them, caimans hunt them, bigger fish hunt them. So they cluster together the way small prey animals do everywhere, safety in numbers. Left to their own choices, they're cautious. Their fearsome group attacks tend to happen in specific conditions. The dry season, when the water drops and shrinks and crowds every animal into the same warm, low pools, and when something in the water signals weakness or distress, then they'll close in, and mostly on something already failing. In that role, they're the cleanup crew of the lagoon, clearing away what would otherwise foul the water and spread sickness through everything else living in it. Not villains, sanitation. That said, the equipment is real, and the equipment is extraordinary. Piranha teeth aren't the cone-shaped points most fish have. They're flat, triangular blades, and they're perfectly symmetrical, and they mesh together when the mouth closes like the teeth of a steel zipper. Top row and bottom row interlock so precisely that a single closing of the jaw shears out a clean, coin-shaped piece in one motion. There's no thrashing, no sawing back and forth. Close, and it's a clean cut. The bite that drives those blades is, pound for pound, one of the strongest in the animal kingdom. Relative to its size, a piranha bites down with a force that outmuscles the numbers estimated for some extinct predatory dinosaurs. All of that packed into a fish that fits in your two hands, and they talk. Researchers dropped underwater microphones into piranha shoals and caught them making sound on purpose. A low bark and a sharp click produced by fast muscles drumming against the swim bladder. They use it as a warning. Before anything escalates, before a single one of those zipper mouths opens, a piranha will bark at a rival to back it off. Half the confrontations in that lagoon get settled by sound, and no one topside ever hears a note of it. Marbled swamp eel. This one shouldn't be alive right now, and yet somewhere out there, buried in cracked, dry mud with no water in sight, one is. It has been down there for months. It hasn't eaten. It hasn't had a drop to drink, and when the rains finally return, it will simply wake up and swim off as if nothing happened. The marbled swamp eel, Synbronchus marmoratus, the mutum, looks like a snake that decided to become a fish or the other way around. It's long, smooth, scaleless, and slick, with none of the fins you'd expect on either side of its body. It is, despite all appearances, a true fish. It just doesn't play by the rules other fish are stuck with. When the Pantanal dries and the lagoons pull back and vanish, other fish have nowhere to go. The mutum digs. It bores a deep vertical shaft down into the last of the wet mud, wraps itself in a thick coat of its own protective slime, and powers down, dropping into a torpor so deep its body is barely ticking over. It can hold that state for more than 3 months, sealed in the earth, waiting. It pulls this off because it doesn't really need its gills. They're reduced and nearly beside the point. Instead, the mutum breathes air directly. It gulps mouthfuls of atmosphere, and the exchange happens across the heavily veined lining of its mouth and throat, and even through its skin. That's what lets it survive out of the water at all. On humid nights when there's just enough moisture on the ground, it will haul its long body clean out of one shrinking puddle and cross open land to reach a better one, moving over the dirt with the ease of an actual snake. But the part that genuinely stops physiologists is a quieter problem. When an animal shuts down in the mud with no water for months, its body keeps producing waste, and one of those waste products is ammonia, which is toxic and which it normally flushes out into the water. With no water, there's nowhere to send it. It should build up in the tissues to a level that turns the animal against itself. The mutum's answer is to chemically rework that ammonia on the spot, converting it into something its body can tolerate, so it can hold the poison safely inside itself for the entire dry season without… And that's the trick, not the surviving without water. The surviving without water while quietly neutralizing what its own body is making until the rain lets it start over. Giant tarantula. Some fears are chemical and some are just visual, and this one is almost entirely visual. An animal roughly the span of a dinner plate, covered head to leg in dense hair with a pair of thick, dark fangs folded under the front of its face. The giant tarantula, Vitalius spp, is the spider your imagination builds when it wants to scare you, and in person, it does not disappoint. But its first line of defense isn't the fangs. When something large, a person, a jaguar, anything that reads as a real threat, leans in too close, the tarantula usually doesn't lunge. It turns around. It presents its back, and it uses its rear legs to rake rapidly at its own abdomen. And in doing so, it throws a fine, invisible cloud into the air, aimed at the face of whatever's crowding it. That cloud is made of thousands of tiny hairs, and the hairs are the weapon. Under a microscope, they're barbed, shaped like little harpoons, some carrying irritant compounds. They're built to catch and hold. When they drift into the wet tissue of an eye or get breathed into an airway, they anchor there and set off a fast, severe reaction. The eyes stream and swell, the throat tightens. And a predator that was a second ago very interested in the spider is now blinded and struggling to breathe and has completely lost the thread. The tarantula doesn't need to touch it. It just fills the air between them with something the attacker can't get back out, and walks away during the confusion. Now the fangs are real, and they're serious hardware, up to nearly an inch long, easily enough to go through skin. Strong enough to crack open the shell of a large beetle by force alone. So here's the part that surprises everyone. For all that, its venom barely registers in a person or a large mammal. A bite from one is, in most cases, roughly on the level of a bee sting. All of that size, all of that menace, and the actual chemistry behind the bite is almost mild. The terror this animal produces is real, but it's the terror of how it looks and how it moves. It's a bluff backed by hairs, and for something built like a nightmare, its love life is oddly delicate. A male approaching a female's burrow has a genuine problem. She's bigger than he is, and to her, movement near the burrow can just mean food. So before he comes any closer, he announces himself. He drums a specific rhythm on the ground with his legs, a careful, deliberate signal that tells her he's a suitor and not a meal. He has to knock in a code she recognizes, because if he gets the introduction wrong, the visit ends with him becoming her dinner instead of her mate. Spectacled Caiman. Sweep a flashlight along the bank of a Pantanal river at night, and you'll catch them from a long way off. Points of light glowing back at you in a hot, red ember color, dozens of them, hundreds of meters out. Those are eyes, and more of them are watching you than you'd like. That red shine belongs to the spectacled. Caiman crocodilus, the Jacaratinga, and it comes from a mirror-like layer behind the eye packed with crystals that bounce light back to help it see in the dark. In daylight, it's just a small caiman. At night, it's a field of floating red points, and it has a temper to match the look. The big caiman of the Pantanal will mostly ignore a person nearby or slide off into the water and leave. The Jacaratinga has a much shorter fuse, corner one, even in a thin sheet of shallow water, and it will wheel around and snap, standing its ground in a way its larger relatives usually won't bother to. Look at its mouth, and you'll see it isn't built like the big crocodilians. Their teeth are thick and cone-shaped, made for heavy work. The Jacaratingas are long, thin, needle-like, and they jut out past the lips at rough, uneven angles. That looks like bad design until you understand what it eats. Fast, smooth, slippery things, fish and frogs that would twist out of a normal grip. Those crooked needles work like the bars of a cage. The prey hits them and gets held, unable to slide back out, and that's the whole idea. It's a trap that closes and doesn't let the slippery ones wriggle free, and yet this snapping, red-eyed little reptile has a genuine weakness, and it's almost tender. It cannot handle the cold. When one of the Pantanal's cold fronts rolls through and the temperature drops, the Jacaratinga is in real danger because it can't warm itself and the chill can overwhelm it. Its survival depends on finding the right sheltered pockets of water, and this is where it gets clever. It lives its life tucked under the thick floating mats of vegetation that cover the quiet water. Those rafts of plants are its blanket and its hideout at once. They hold warmth. They hide its young, and they let it move around underneath completely unseen. A set of red eyes cruising invisibly beneath a field of green. Watching the bank through the gaps, you can spot the Jacaratinga's eyes from hundreds of meters away. The last animal in this part, you won't see at all, not until it's already inside you. Human botfly. The scheme this insect runs is so indirect that it took people a long time to work out how it even happens. Someone would come back from the forest, and days later a small lump would rise under the skin, and something would be living in it. And nobody could figure out when they'd been near the fly that did it. Because in most cases, they never were. The human botfly, Dermatobia hominis, the source of the burn, does not deliver its own eggs. The adult female is far too conspicuous. If she tried to land on a large animal and lay eggs directly, she'd be noticed and swatted long before she finished. So she outsources it. She catches another insect in midair, a mosquito, a horsefly, something that already makes its living biting warm-blooded animals, holds it, and glues her eggs to the underside of its body with a fast-setting adhesive. Then she lets it go. The mosquito flies off carrying a cargo it has no idea it's holding, and the next time it lands on a person or an animal to feed, the warmth of the skin triggers the eggs. They hatch on the spot, and the tiny larvae drop down and slip in through the fresh bite or a pore. The fly never came near you. It hired a courier. Once inside, the larva settles into the skin and starts to grow, and it is built to stay put. Its body is ringed with rows of small, backward-pointing spines, and they work like a one-way barb. They let it settle deeper and lock it against being pushed back out. You can't simply squeeze it free. The spines catch and hold. Getting one out generally means either a small procedure or cutting off its air first, since it breathes through a tiny opening at the skin's surface. And it isn't a quick visit. A single larva can spend anywhere from about 5 weeks to 2 months down there, slowly growing, feeding on the fluids the body produces around it, until it's ready to leave on its own terms. Here's the detail that turns this from unpleasant into genuinely uncanny. The whole time it's in there, it's medicating its host. The larva releases substances that dull the area, so the constant activity underneath doesn't register as sharp, ongoing pain the way it should. And it releases something that acts against bacteria, keeping the little wound clean. Think about what that means. The parasite is actively protecting the host, not out of kindness, but because a host who gets a bad infection or who is driven to dig it out from the pain is no good to it. It needs you comfortable and healthy for a month, so it keeps you that way. And the adult it grows into? It has no working mouth at all. Its feeding parts are shrunken and useless. It will never eat a single thing in its adult life. It has a handful of days and one item on the agenda: pair off, arrange for the next round of couriers, and it's done. The entire eating, growing, medicating career of this animal happened while it was a grub under someone's skin. The fly it becomes is just the part that arranges the next delivery, and then it's over. Boa constrictor. There's a specific kind of fear that comes from being watched by something you can't see, and the boa constrictor, is built to produce it. It lies along a low branch, patterned exactly like the bark and the dappled light around it, and it waits, a length of muscle disguised as part of the tree. But the part worth slowing down on isn't the ambush. It's what happens after it takes hold. People picture a constrictor crushing bones, snapping its prey in some brute display of force. That's not it at all, and the truth is far more precise. The boa coils around its catch and then it listens, through its own body. It can feel the prey's heartbeat against its skin, and it uses that heartbeat as its guide. Each time the heart tries to push, the snake answers by tightening a fraction more, closing off the flow of blood. It isn't about the lungs, and it isn't about breaking anything. It's about circulation. Cut the supply to the brain, and the lights go out quickly. And the boa reads the fading pulse and knows exactly when to stop. It applies only as much as the moment requires, adjusting in real time to a signal coming through its skin. It reads the rest of its world just as finely. That flicking forked tongue isn't for show. It's collecting chemical particles from the air and delivering them to a sensory patch in the roof of its mouth. And from that, the boa builds a detailed, almost three-dimensional map of what's around it and which way it went. It's essentially tasting the shape of the air. And for all of that machinery, the boa carries no venom at all, and it isn't looking for a fight. Its temperament is slow and mild. Confront one and its first choices are to freeze, to play lifeless, or to let out a long, loud hiss meant to make you reconsider, a bluff before a bite. But once a meal is down, its body finishes the job completely. The acid in its stomach drops to a level harsh enough to break down teeth, claws, and bone, so that almost nothing of the prey is wasted. It takes in nearly the whole animal, nothing left to find. Flat whiskered catfish. Every river needs someone to handle what sinks, and in the Pantanal, that job belongs to a pale, long, whiskered catfish that works the dark bottom of the deep channels. People call it the grave digger, and the name is fair. When an animal goes under and settles into the depths, this is very often the first thing to arrive. The flat-whiskered catfish, Pinirampus piranampu. The piranambu finds its work by smell, or something close to it. Running back along the sides of its mouth are a pair of barbels so long they reach nearly halfway down its body. And they're not just feelers. They're coated with thousands of taste buds on the outside. So the fish is essentially tasting the water and the mud as it moves, dragging these long external tongues through the black silt, reading it for anything organic. When it locks onto something on the bottom, it doesn't come alone. Piranhas gather, and a group of them can strip the soft parts from a good-sized carcass in a matter of hours. Faster, down there in the cold, deep water, than decay itself would manage. Which makes the name a little unfair, because this is not a foul animal. Just the opposite. It prefers clean, oxygen-rich, moving water in the deep channels, and the service it performs is one the whole river depends on. Without it, and the others like it, the organic matter would pile up and turn the water bad for everything. It isn't fouling the river. It's the reason the river stays livable, and it follows the water's moods. When the floods come and the Pantanal spreads out into the trees, the piranha goes with it, moving into the drowned forest to take advantage of whatever the rising water caught out. The land animals that didn't make it to higher ground. When the water drops, it falls back to the deep channels. It goes where the work is. Freshwater crab. On certain wet nights, the ground itself seems to move. Thousands of deep red crabs come up out of the drying channels all at once and set off across the land together. A slow tide of shells and raised claws spilling over the trails and the roads, clicking in the dark. If you're out walking, it looks like the plane has declared war on your ankles. The freshwater crab, Dilocarcinus page, makes these mass overland marches when its water starts to fail or the night turns humid enough to risk it, all of them heading off in search of somewhere better to live. And they can make the trip because of a neat piece of plumbing. Their gill chambers are sealed well enough to hold a private reserve of water inside, so the crab keeps breathing from its own supply as it crosses dry ground, carrying its little tank of river with it. That's what buys it the time to march. The claws are real and a pinch is no joke. They can drive in bacteria from the mud that turns a small wound into a stubborn, slow-healing one. So the army looks the part. But here's the truth underneath the menace. These crabs are among the most vulnerable animals in the whole story. Dry them out and they're finished. They live and die by the health of their water. And they are, quietly, one of the most important animals in the Pantanal. Not as a threat, but as a meal. Wading birds eat them. Young caimans eat them. Nearly everything with a taste for the shallows eats them. The red army that looks like it's marching to attack is really the food that half the basin is built on. Cane toad. Everything else in this video has a move, a strike, a shock, a bite, a march. This last one has no move at all, and that's exactly what makes it so hard to deal with. When a predator closes in, the cane toad does not run. It does not leap. It stays. The cane toad meets a threat by pulling in a huge breath and swelling itself up, tucking its head down to guard its soft parts and hunching its back upward. What it's doing is presenting the two large glands set behind its eyes, aiming them right at whatever's about to bite. Those glands are its entire defense, and they are enough. Each one is a spongy reservoir packed with a thick, pale fluid, and that fluid is loaded with compounds that act directly on the heart. Bite down, and the pressure of your own teeth squeezes it straight into your mouth. A single adult toad carries enough to bring down dozens of dogs. An animal that decides to mouth this thing usually only decides it once, and it wears the villain's costume for nothing. Because the cane toad is one of the most useful neighbors a Pantanal farm has. Every night, in total silence, it works its way through the things people actually fear: agricultural pests, disease-carrying insects, the wandering spiders, the armored beetles, even the venomous scorpions. It's a slow, warty, tireless cleanup operation, and it asks for nothing. But a few of the Pantanal's birds have cracked it. Caracaras and the local jays worked out that the whole defense is on the outside. that the top of the toad is the part to avoid. So they don't fight the glands. They flip it. They peck and worry at the toad until they get it turned over onto its back, and then they open it from below, taking the clean meat and the organs inside and leaving the poisonous top of the animal completely alone. And that's the image to leave you with. Out on the mudflats at first light, a row of cane toads, turned belly up and neatly emptied, their venom still sitting there in the glands, perfectly potent and perfectly useless, untouched on the bank, while the birds that outsmarted them are already gone.